Insurgency Sandstorm is an excellent multiplayer shooter that successfully avoids the common pitfalls of military simulation, but still manages to deliver an immersive, at times disturbing, sense of realism. Its arsenal consists of some of the best realized firearms in any video game to date, thanks to stellar sound design, snappy animations, and an obsessive attention to detail. Elsewhere though, things aren't quite as glamorous. Still, Sandstorm punches well above its weight, offering phenomenal gunplay that shows up much of its big-budget competition. If ever there was an example of outstanding FPS gunplay, Insurgency Sandstorm is surely it. That surprisingly elusive feeling isn't a result of any one factor, but rather a marriage of several. To boil it down, pronounced but manageable recoil, a near instantaneous time to kill, percussive sound, impactful graphics, and an obsessive understanding of firearms. And while Sandstorm has all of the aforementioned qualities, it leans particularly hard on its knowledge of how guns actually work. Upon chambering a round at the start of a match, you can then swap magazines to effectively increase your capacity by one extra bullet. Tiny details like the depression of the magazine release or the change in position of the fire selection switch are all visible on the gun model and thoroughly appreciated. You can double tap the reload button to perform a hasty magazine swap that, while faster, discards any remaining ammunition in the spent magazine. And finally, there is a slight dead zone in the middle of your aiming axis where only the gun moves and your character does not, which sounds weird but feels great. These details may seem trivial, but the results are anything but. And the effect that all this realistic weaponry has on the battlefield is downright scary. If you're looking to walk away from your modern military FPS with mild tinnitus, then Sandstorm is a good place to start. I've never been in combat, but this seems to be a much more realistic representation than we typically see in video games. The most disturbing sounds come in the form of determined blood-spewing coughs and the labored wailing death rattles produced by both your enemies and allies. These touches are intense, and I wouldn't blame you if you find them to be in poor taste, but I for one prefer a depiction of war that doesn't obscure its horrific nature. While its commitment to realism is apparent, Insurgency Sandstorm also knows when gameplay should come first, which is a very good thing. For instance, even in the absence of enemy hit indicators, I was rarely left pondering a rival's fate, thanks to an impressively large mist of blood. Other compromises are even less subtle. HUD elements display the position of allies through walls or the direction of incoming fire. Kicking in the door has the effect of instantly killing anyone on the other side, and you can even jump on a grenade to reduce or prevent the damage dealt to nearby allies. All three of the non-competitive modes, featuring up to 32 players, are enjoyable in their own right, but the smaller scale firefight stands well above the rest. The objective is deceptively simple, and the ensuing high-stakes strategy makes each match tense, enjoyable, and replayable. The 6 maps are at their best in this humble setting, but even here, unintuitive boundaries called restricted areas manage to frustrate me. The problem is that there is no visual language in either the map design or HUD that distinguishes where these invisible borders are. This makes learning the ins and outs of where you can and cannot go in a particular portion of a particular map on a particular mode total guesswork, and while some boundaries will eventually kill you or disable your weapons, others can be completely ignored. For instance, you can bulldoze through restricted areas on multiple points on Precinct to unfairly flank enemies from an unexpected angle. Furthermore, it just feels sloppy to have so many no-go zones so close to the objectives themselves. I go into greater detail on why most of the maps fall into the just okay category in my written review. I've seen a few minor bugs, but most are of the graphical and hopefully easy to fix variety. Meanwhile, there are a few noticeable oversights, like clunky vaulting and the inability to disable the maddening mic chirp of allied players. Progression in Insurgency Sandstorm is purely aesthetic in nature. Each of the 33 firearms and dozen or so attachments are unlocked from the very get-go, with the only limiting factors being your class, faction, and loadout points. Tinkering with point distribution proved to be a fun and rewarding process of trial and error. You may not always get to play your favorite class because most roles have a limit on how many people are allowed to play them at one time. However, I was never particularly disappointed at the prospect of being forced to play the Rifleman, as the basic class offers fantastic versatility and has no problem competing with more specialized archetypes like the Observer and Commander, who can call in powerful ordnance when working together. Finally, I discussed the competitive and cooperative modes in my written review. Insurgency Sandstorm isn't the prettiest shooter of 2018, but the places where it excels are the places that matter to me most as a player. Its gunplay is superb, its arsenal exemplary, and with the exception of the excellent firefight, the maps and modes are serviceable enough to facilitate its memorably frantic and immersive FPS combat. I can't wait to see where it goes in the future, but even as it stands now, Insurgency Sandstorm is a pleasant surprise that's worthy of your time. If you enjoyed the review, shoot me a follow on Twitter @ThugandDuggan. And for all things first-person shooters, keep it right here on IGN.